This episode is supported by Bike Pittsburgh. You heard it here first. Their signature summer event, Open Streets Pittsburgh, is back for 2025. If you've never been before, Open Streets Pittsburgh is this incredible event where the streets in specific neighborhoods get shut down to cars so that bikers and rollerbladers and pedestrians can all take over the road. It's one of my favorite summer activities. I love seeing the way people can build the sense of community connection when the streets become car-free. And you get to experience the city from a whole new perspective, strolling or skipping or even dancing down streets that are normally dominated by cars. This year, Open Streets Pittsburgh is happening on Sunday, June 29th and Sunday, July 27th. You can stay tuned for updates at openstreetspgh.org or follow OpenStreetsPGH on Instagram.
City Cast Pittsburgh is supported today by the Heinz History Center and their newest exhibition, Pittsburgh's Hidden History. It is a cornucopia of curiosity, a magical menagerie of memory, and a little bit of this and that. There are flowery couches, relics from Kennywood, even a collection of shivs. If you listen to this show a lot, you know we are loving this. It is truly mind-boggling to see how the curators brought together such a wide range of rarely seen artifacts to tell Pittsburgh stories like never before. To buy your tickets and learn more, visit HeinzHistoryCenter.org. Today on City Cast Pittsburgh.
Your voices and your call for accountable leadership and growth have been heard in this Democratic primary.
Corey O'Connor has won the Democratic primary, beating out incumbent Mayor Ed Gainey. That means O'Connor is most likely Pittsburgh's next mayor. Today I'm with CityCast Mallory Falk and Sophia Lowe to talk about the election results and what you need to know about what Pittsburgh is facing next. It's Wednesday, May 21st. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about. Mallory, Sophia, good morning. Good early morning.
Good early morning.
We are up so early because it was a big election night. So we went to bed very, very early. I didn't see who won before I went to bed. Did y'all?
I tucked myself in at 9 p.m. and did not go to sleep for about 3 hours. So yes, I did see who won.
I panic woke up at like 2 a.m. So that's when I saw the winner.
I mean, I dreamed about both Gainey and O'Connor like all night. I'm not sure that says good things about me. For the second time in a row, a Democratic challenger beat out the incumbent in the mayoral primary. Gainey managed to unseat Peduto 4 years ago, and now O'Connor has done the same to Gainey. We're going to get into that in a second here, but first we wanted to talk a little bit about turnout, like just how many voters actually came out to the polls.
Yeah. And, usually turnout is not super high in this kind of an election, an off-year primary. That means, no presidential race, no midterm elections. And that was the case yesterday. According to the county, 25% of registered voters cast ballots. And that's for any ballot, not just the mayor's race. But that is lower than the last mayoral primary back in 2021. Turnout there was 29%. So not trending in a great direction. And looking just at the mayoral race, about 59,000 people voted in the Democratic primary and about 4,600 voted in the Republican primary.
I mean, I feel like the conjecture I've seen, certainly around like the city county building, has been that the storm just destroyed people, like mentally, emotionally, in some cases, like actually their homes and their livelihoods.
Right.
Like the election just could not be the all-consuming thing that it normally would be. Like a mayor's race is usually a really big deal, but like the storm just took it out of people so that like by the time they got to this, like even, for example, like some of the communications that was happening from the campaign said that they had to pause for a while, like for the storm stuff, just to be like thoughtful to people. Like you can't hammer campaign issues like that when you have people without power for over a week.
That's interesting. I mean, I feel like I've heard like up until election day, people saying, I have no idea to vote for. Tell me who to vote for.
I know.
And so I also
it.
feel like
that.
There was a sense that people maybe weren't, or at least some people were not as plugged into this race. But, seeing those numbers, seeing that turnout of just 25% of registered voters participating, this is such a consequential race. The mayor determines the vision for the city. We have candidates offering up different visions. And it's wild to me that such a small percentage of Pittsburgh voters are determining the future. So I know it's a little late for like a get out the vote pep talk. The election just happened, but it still kind of bums me out that only about a quarter of people participated.
Mallory's disappointed in you, Pittsburgh.
Mallory wants more people to show up in November. But, for the people that did show up to the polls this time around, it seems like things went pretty smooth on Election Day. There were a few issues at some polling places, like a couple of spots where poll workers couldn't get into the building.
There's always one. There's always at least one precinct where like somebody forgets the keys that day. And I just find it hilarious. Like that feels like a thing you should triple check.
Yeah, but also I kind of get it as someone who forgets their keys. There were also some equipment issues that delayed voting. Also, everyone struggles with tech at some point.
Yeah, and there's really good helplines set up at the county level for if there are any hiccups. They have so many backup plans to help make sure that the voting itself does not get delayed.
Right. Like everything was up and running pretty soon after. There was one polling place in the New Homestead, Hayes area that closed because someone spilled natural gas at the site. And then, again, problem solving, people were redirected to a different voting location just a couple minutes away. And, results came in pretty quickly. The AP was able to call the mayoral race just after 10 p.m.
When I was sound asleep.
Yeah. And I mean, as of this recording, nearly all of the races have been called or there is a presumed winner. But there is one pretty notable exception. There is a school board race that, at the time we're recording is too close to call because the incumbent is holding on to his seat by one vote. Just one vote.
This is wild.
Yeah.
I did not expect anything to be this close.
Nobody ever does. But this is what happens when only 25% of your electorate shows out to vote.
Listen, if you ever needed a reminder that every vote matters, consider this your reminder. You could be the deciding vote for something pretty important. But anyway, let's turn to the big race.
Yes, the mayor's office. So like you said, Mallory, 59,000 votes cast. About 53% of those went to O'Connor, 47% for Gainey. There were also 185 write-ins. And y'all, I truly cannot wait to see those. There's
Mickey
always
Mouse for mayor.
There's always some gems in there. If you were watching last night, you probably saw O'Connor took a little bit of an early lead. That was anticipated. I heard people talking about how that was kind of what they expected to see with some of the mail-in ballots. But Gainey closed the gaps as more precincts reported in. It just was not enough. He told his crowd of supporters on the South Side, he was with the American Federation of Teachers, that he loved them. When they booed for O'Connor, he said, don't do that. Don't spread hate. He told KDKA that this is just a continuation for the progressive mantle that he took on personally several years ago.
You leave everything out there. I'm proud of the coalition that we built. I mean, you've seen the room tonight. You've seen the room. This is a reflective of what we want in this city, and it will continue to grow. Like I said, there are some people behind me right now that are ready, and I'm proud that they're ready. And so this is the city we will continue to be able to say we're proud of, and we will continue in that way.
No, look, y'all, I know what he means by people behind him. He's talking about like people who are going to run for office next. But I do think it is important to note that the person literally standing behind him as he's saying this is Jake Wheatley, who was his chief of staff, who got fired sort of in a scandal a couple months ago, which Ed, this was maybe one of the issues of your whole campaign.
Right. I feel like people also were super hung up on Gainey and the police chief scandal, debacle, the stuff that is still going on, 5 police chiefs under his tenure.
And some of those, granted, one was a retirement, that's not all due to his leadership.
Well, sort of, but it's also it's a retirement because a new mayor at that point had come in and the police chief does not have to leave. Scott Schubert could have stayed if Gainey wanted him to.
Yeah, but regardless, I think a lot of his critics had issues with transparency during Gainey's administration.
Yeah, and we'll let Gainey talk about his own legacy, too.
I'm a mayor of change. I'm a mayor that wants to see a city for all. I'm a mayor that wants to make sure that we have affordable housing and that we have everything that we need, that we're reducing homicides in every community, in every neighborhood, that we're allowing our communities and our neighborhoods to know that we're there for them. And that's the message we push for 3 years. It wasn't a popular message, but it was the populist message.
But there are problems with that. According to the city statistics, what is actually publicly available, there's not a ton of clear info.
Yeah, it's like 2024 and a tiny piece of 2025. That's all that's online right now.
So according to that info, homicides are down, but other crime metrics are mostly up. And then the dashboard about affordable housing units has mostly been debunked. Like Gainey's claimed 1,600 new units, but local reporting can only verify about 200 of those, which is not nothing.
It's really impressive, but when you compare it to what he says he's done, it feels
difference.
Less impressive.
Exactly. But for sure, he's been the first mayor in a long time to bring a lot of new people into the political fold. People have had a seat at the table or felt heard under Gainey's administration in ways that they didn't experience under the previous mayoral ones. But, the flip side of that is other people say his office doesn't answer the phone when they have issues. And Gainey's deputy has even sort of bragged about how unreachable they can be.
Yeah, I think that's been an ongoing thing about kind of Gainey's administration and Gainey himself talking about how, it's not just a select group of people whose perspectives and opinions and voices are prioritized, that they're bringing in people who, historically weren't heard or were neglected. I do want to say I think homicides coming down is a big accomplishment. And as we move forward, I think we'll be talking for a long time about what Gainey's key achievements and landmarks in office were and the lasting impact of his administration on the city.
Yeah, and I mean, assuming O'Connor is successful in November, there's every reason to believe he will be. Taking over the mayor's office and the challenges that are coming right now is a big uphill climb. It is so easy to criticize an incumbent because you can point to all the things that they've said they wanted to do and did not get done.
Very true.
But changing the tide takes time, takes political will, and often money, which Pittsburgh is extremely short on right now. Just a reminder here, the backdrop of all this is that multiple analyses, official ones, have now said that our city books are not balanced, that Pittsburgh's expenditures vastly exceed our ability to pay for everything we have to pay for. Tax revenue is down, and this year is going to be horrible for overtime payments. We are way ahead of schedule on how much money we've already had to shell out for that, and is going to get worse. And the bills are coming. 2025 is kind of already set. It's gonna be a financial mess. So this is Corey's mess now to clean up, no matter what comes next.
But some of that has to do with the COVID money, which is gone. These are issues that are facing a lot of cities across the country right now.
Definitely.
But, some good news. Our population has modestly improved. A recent census estimate suggests that we actually went up about 1% over the last year. So it'll be on probably O'Connor to continue the growth that he says he wants to have.
And to that political will piece, too, both candidates talked last night about party unity because Democrats locally and I think nationally are sort of at each other's throats right now. Corey O'Connor said that he heard from Gainey right away that the two were going to get together in the next couple of weeks to talk about what's ahead. He told KDKA that Gainey's love for the city was never in doubt. They just had different visions about how to get this done. But here's how he talked about a few of his day one priorities.
We got to get through the fall, but, I think there's a lot on there. Looking at the finances, working with our larger corporations so that they work with us, our nonprofits, investing in our fleet, getting a chief of police. Obviously we have to hire staff as well. So there's a lot to do, but we have to win in the fall first.
And he also talked about affordable housing, supports for small businesses. One thing he's been talking a lot about that Public Source actually goes into pretty good detail on is one Main Street style support that kind of mirrors a Peduto era thing. So we'll see what he actually is able to jump in on right away.
Also, by get through the fall there, what O'Connor means, of course, is the election in November. So officially for now, he is just the Democratic Party nominee. But, Republicans haven't won the mayor's office in almost a century. So typically here, whoever wins the Democratic nomination wins it all.
But there is someone on the Republican ticket.
Yes.
Like we said, about 4,600 Republican ballots were cast, and retired police officer Tony Moreno came out on top. He got about 62% of the vote, and his challenger was Thomas West. He owns a men's clothing store in Lawrenceville.
Yeah, West got 26% of the vote. The rest were write-ins. There was a bigger percentage for Republicans than Democrats. Here's how West talked about his takeaways.
The biggest takeaway is a lot of people are just upset with the way the city is going. And they've not had a choice. They have a choice this time. But I think my biggest takeaway is I think people just want change. But to have change, you have to get out there and you have to vote.
Meanwhile, Moreno celebrated in Brookline. He talked about the police, of course.
Of course.
He said Gainey set a historic precedent, but he wants to bring transparency back to the mayor's office. We're going to play a clip, but a funny note here, it sounds like someone's very metal ringtone went off in the middle of his speech.
We're going to build our public safety back to the strength and pride that it deserves. We're going to clean our streets so you can be proud bringing family in. We're going to make sure our public works is built. We're going to make sure the Columbus statue is recognized and taken care of. We're going to make sure our parks are taken care of. We're going to make sure our money's spent appropriately. We're going to make sure everybody in the communities are living the lives that they want to live.
Love that he decided to lead with the Columbus statue. Like, of the top 4 tenets, Columbus statue is among them.
Yeah, I was catching up on that speech this morning, and Moreno also talked about how he was going to be running against Corey, not his father's son, O'Connor.
Ooh.
So I think we have a little preview of what this election is going to sound like moving forward.
Hey, Pittsburgh. Today's show is sponsored by Pittsburgh Pride. It is back. It is bigger. It is bolder. It is gayer than ever before. Get ready for a full week of love, liberation, and celebration across the city with Pittsburgh Pride 2025. It all kicks off Sunday, May 25th with the Bigger, Gayer Picnic. Think sunshine, chosen family, and all the queer joy you can pack into one Pittsburgh park. Then on Friday, May 30th, put on your formal or your fiercest. It's the Pittsburgh Pride Prom, followed by the legendary Emerald City Kiki Ball. Yes, the ballroom scene is turning out. Saturday, May 31st, brings the Pittsburgh Pride Festival Day 1 with a free concert featuring Vienna Vienna and American Idol alum David Archuleta, lighting up the night at 7 p.m. And finally, if you can handle it, Sunday, June 1st, come march with your community in the Pittsburgh Pride Parade. Then stick around for the festival Day 2, closing everything out with another free concert starring Jay Howell and the iconic Lil Mo. For all the events, all of the info, head over to pittsburghpride.com to plan your perfect Pittsburgh Pride weekend. That's pittsburghpride.com. Come as you are, show up proud, and we will see you there.
Are you still quoting 30-year-old movies? Have you said cool beans in the past 90 days? Do you think Discover isn't widely accepted? If this sounds like you, you're stuck in the past. Discover is accepted at 99% of places that take credit cards nationwide. And every time you make a purchase with your card, you automatically earn cash back. Welcome to the now. It pays to Discover. Learn more at discover.com/credit card, based on the February 2024 Nielsen report.
So now we're going to talk about everything else that Pittsburgh and Allegheny County voted for. First up is City Council.
Reminder, we were only voting for even districts this year for City Council. That's 2, 4, 6, and 8. And District 2 is the only one that's going to likely yield a fresh face because the incumbent, Teresa Cale Smith, she is retiring. So the primary ballots officially listed her chief of staff, Kim Salinetro, and Republican Aaron Copper. Both will move on to the election in November.
Yeah. And, none of these races were officially contested on the Democratic or Republican side except for District 2. So Democrat Amanda Neutrauer, she didn't make it onto the ballot, but she ended up running as a write-in candidate. And this seat definitely had the most write-ins. There were 606. The next highest number was 141 write-ins. We don't know how many people specifically wrote in Neutrauer's name, but it seems like there was maybe some traction there. But still, Salinetro handily won the primary. So not a ton of competition in any of these races.
Yeah, and just to quickly run through them. So District 4, incumbent Democrat Anthony Coghill will face Republican Tracy Larger. District 6, Council President Democrat Dan Lavelle will face Republican Jacob Dumont. And in District 8, incumbent Democrat Erica Strasburger won the Democratic primary, but no Republicans were running. So unless there was a hefty write-in campaign, she's sailing to victory in November.
Nail biter.
We'll move on to the ballot measures, one of the other big things happening here in the city. Pittsburgh voted yes on all of them, which means we're going to have some changes to our home rule charter. Let's talk about what that means.
So starting with question 1, this question was about whether the city should prohibit business discrimination on the basis of our protected classes. So that includes things like age, race, sexual orientation, and then plus the association or affiliation with any nation or foreign state. So we already have anti-discrimination protections for those protected classes I named, plus a bunch more.
They're in city code, but they're not in the home rule charter.
Mm-hmm. So what's like completely new, though, is that bit about nations and foreign states.
And reminder, this ballot question was introduced by City Council in response to a grassroots organization's efforts. So Not on Our Dime was trying to get a question on the ballot about whether the city should divest from governments engaged in genocide and corporations who are in businesses with those governments. It mentioned Israel by name. That question never made it to the ballot. Not on Our Dime withdrew their petition because of legal challenges. But that was kind of the background piece to questions 1 and 3.
Exactly. But the yes vote on question 1 means that, those protected classes get that like double tap. But, quote, connection, association, or affiliation with any foreign state, unquote, gets added to that list in the home rule charter. So Pittsburgh cannot divest from a company because of its ties or relationships with, any other country.
Or at least like voters can't force them to through a ballot measure.
Yeah. And we could still decide to divest for, quote unquote, other reasons.
Okay, moving on to question number 2. So this was about trying to prevent our sewer and water system from ever getting sold to private entities, from ever privatizing. Voters approved of this, which means that there is going to be a clause added to the charter that says, these entities cannot be sold. It just adds an extra layer of protection to keep Pittsburgh Water public. Pittsburgh Water has said they have no desire to privatize, but this just formalizes it in writing that our water and sewer system will stay public.
And it's because our lease was up this year that they were having this conversation. Although I will note they have talked about potentially privatizing in the past. It's just never become a serious thing.
And then last up, ballot question number 3. This one asked whether our charter should be amended so that the city is not forced to do anything that's, quote, beyond the lawful scope of the city's authority. Again, this was drafted in response to Not on Our Dime's efforts, and voters voted yes. So this means that drafters of future ballot questions, they have to prove they're asking the city to do something it has the legal authority to do before a question can end up on the ballot.
But once again, council is not subject to that same rule. They can vote something in and it doesn't, then it'll get struck down if it doesn't actually hold water. I think this is wild that council put this through to make voters do a thing, but council's not subject to it. For what it's worth, Erica Strasburger, a council person who just won her election, she said, quote, I would hope that in future this puts some guardrails on to ensure that they're focused on city-specific issues rather than to do all the work to have the people vote and then find out afterwards that it doesn't work in Pittsburgh or it's illegal for us because it exceeds our jurisdiction. The one caveat I guess I'll give Strasburger there is that it is a different thing for 9 council people to vote for something versus organizing an entire election around a voter referendum. But still, you guys could vote the same thing for city council. You wanna put yourself under the same rules you just gave for voters? Come on.
Okay, well, we're gonna go on to the school board next. 5 out of 9 seats were up for election. One was a foregone conclusion, another situation where the incumbent was running unopposed. All the candidates were Democrats, so they're not facing opposition in the general unless there are write-in candidates. So these winners are effectively our new school board members.
Yeah. And, when we talked about this race before, we mentioned that there was this political action committee that had endorsed a slate of 5 candidates who, this PAC says, are really focused on improving outcomes for Black students. It's called Black Women for a Better Education. WESA reported it spent more than $15,000 on the race. So, was curious to see how much their endorsements mattered. As of this recording, 4 of the candidates that this PAC backed won seats. So that's Tawana Cook-Purnell, Erica Grayson, Eva Diotati, and Tracy Reed. Unsurprising there, she was that incumbent who was running unopposed. And then the 5th person they endorsed, who is an incumbent, and the current school board president, Gene Walker. He is the one who, as we are recording this, is in the lead by just one vote. Less than 3% of votes still need to be counted, so we'll see what ends up happening there. But I think this is interesting because the seat is in some ways kind of a referendum on the district's closure plans, a reminder that what's at stake here is Pittsburgh Public Schools is considering this huge overhaul, closing some schools, consolidating others. And Walker has said that these closures are needed and that this big overhaul is essential to improving outcomes for Black students. Of all of the school board candidates who are running, it sounds like his opponent, Ali Potonik, I hope I'm saying that correctly, she was the most opposed to closures, at least from reporting in Public Source. Like, all the other candidates acknowledged some closures do need to happen. They just called for more transparency and community engagement. So we will see who ultimately wins that seat, what ultimately happens, but a reminder that these school board members are going to be really involved with figuring out how closures get implemented and whether we can, in fact, make our school district more equitable.
And also reviewing the superintendent's contract when it comes up for review in 2027. There's a lot of minutia to how the school board gets run, and it has an enormous budget, many, many, many millions of dollars. So it's important who's running these things. One thing to note too, whenever the margin for error is this tiny, I'm pretty sure there's some small threshold that you can meet to trigger a recount if that's a thing that the candidates want. So I would be surprised if that doesn't come into play at some point in the next few days.
Well, turning now from the city to the county, there were some county council races. Reminder, there are 15 seats in Allegheny County Council. 6 were up for grabs. And the next slate of councilors could decide whether to pursue a countywide property reassessment that would make your property taxes better reflect the current state of your home. So for some people, that means your taxes would go up. For others, it means it would go down. This has been a big point of discussion for years and years. These councilors will be weighing that.
And it would probably mostly go up because this was last done a long time ago and pretty much all property values have increased. Only 2 contested races for this one. Democrat Kathleen Madonna Emmerling. She's going to face now Republican Mary Jo Wise in November. And then in District 9, Democrat Aaron Adams. No Republican, though, on the primary ballot. So should sail to victory in November, barring a write-in campaign.
Yeah, and that first Democrat you mentioned, Kathleen Madonna Emmerling, that is in District 1.
And in addition to District 1 and 9, you'll also see Districts 3, 4, 8, and 12 on your ballot in November.
Yeah, just no challengers for the primary, so they sailed right through.
And then District 13 is a little bit interesting. That's actually going to get chosen after the primary. The current council member resigned last month, so that is going to be a separate process, figuring out who takes that seat.
And we'll end things with judges. There were locals, there were state. We'll start with the local bunch. They were for the Allegheny Court of Common Pleas.
And if you were voting on the Democratic ballot, there was a very long list of names. There are 22 candidates running for 8 seats. All 8 candidates endorsed by the Allegheny County Democratic Committee won.
Yeah, and this one was interesting because there are a few different groups kind of weighing in on their preferred judges. So for a long time, the Allegheny County Bar Association has given recommendations. So 4 of the candidates that they recommended won the primaries. And then there's also been a coalition of progressive groups who wanted to kind of provide alternative endorsements to really focus on candidates who are focused on criminal justice reform. And so 4 out of the slate of 8 candidates that they endorsed won the Democratic primary.
Republicans also had a lot of write-in votes for judges, more than usual. It was 28,000.
Across all seats, because this was one that was just a really full field.
Mm-hmm. And some of the judges that didn't make the top 8 on the Democratic side will still be on the ballot in November as Republicans. Since judges are considered nonpartisan positions, candidates are allowed to cross-file and run as both Democrats and Republicans.
So then the state, we had 2 courts in play here, Commonwealth Court and Superior Court. They are different, but in both cases, there was 1 Democrat and 2 Republicans on their respective ballots. So in Commonwealth Court, Democrat Stella Tye and Republican Matt Wolford will appear on the ballot in November. And then for Superior Court, Democrat Brandon Newman will face Republican Maria Batista.
Yes, because for both of these courts, there is just 1 open seat.
And I know we threw a lot of names out there, so if you want to look at all these results again and, get a preview of what's going to be on your ballot in November, check out our website. That's pittsburgh.citycast.fm, and also subscribe to that Hey Pittsburgh newsletter. I am sure we will put an update in there once we figure out who wins that school board race.
That's all for today here on City Cast Pittsburgh. We will be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. We'll talk to you soon.
See you in November for more election coverage.